Babylon under Assyrian rule, and the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. By the 9th century BCE, a revitalized Neo-Assyrian Empire from northern Mesopotamia began exerting control over Babylon. Although culturally related, Assyria and Babylonia were long-standing political rivals. To Assyria, Babylon was both a valuable and troublesome territory. From roughly 900 to 600 BCE, Babylon's fate was entangled with Assyria's rise and fall. During this era, Babylon was at times ruled directly by Assyrian kings, sometimes by local client rulers, and frequently racked by rebellion, often led by Babylonian elites or tribal leaders like the Chaldeans who sought independence. One of the first notable clashes occurred in 853 BCE, when King Shalmaneser III of Assyria recorded fighting Babylonian forces. Later, Tiglath-Pileser III, r. 745 to 727 BCE, took a more aggressive stance. Amid local turmoil, he invaded Babylon in 729 BCE and crowned himself king. He even adopted a Babylonian throne name, an effort to legitimize his rule and honor Babylon's status while quietly incorporating it into the Assyrian Empire. But Babylonian resistance remained strong. The Chaldean warlord Marduk-Kapladina II, better known as Merodach-Baladan, seized the city whenever Assyrian control weakened. In 722 BCE, after the death of the Assyrian king Shalmaneser V, Merodach-Baladan occupied Babylon and was eventually recognized as king. Yet rebellion flared again. After Sargon's death, Merodach-Baladan returned and stirred further uprisings. Sargon's son, Sennacherib, r. 704 to 681 BCE, dealt with constant unrest. His initial strategy was to install puppet rulers, first the noble Bel-Ibni, then his own son. Both failed. After a massive rebellion in 689 BCE, Sennacherib unleashed brutal revenge. He destroyed Babylon completely, leveling its temples, walls, and palaces. The ruins were dumped into the Euphrates River. He boasted that the city was annihilated so thoroughly that no trace of it would remain. This act, even by ancient standards, was considered deeply impious. Babylon was the religious heartland of Mesopotamia. Many interpreted Sennacherib's assassination in 681 BCE by his own sons, while he prayed in a temple, as divine punishment, the wrath of Marduk for his sacrilege. Rebuilding and the return of Babylon. Sennacherib's successor, Esarhaddon, immediately reversed course. Realizing the impossibility of ruling Mesopotamia without Babylon's support, he began rebuilding the city. By 680 BCE, temples, streets, and sanctuaries were being restored. Babylon was slowly resettled and revived. Esarhaddon also devised a clever political solution. He divided his empire between his sons. Shamash-Shum-Ukin, the elder, was given Babylon, while the younger, Ashurbanipal, ruled Assyria from Nineveh. This arrangement acknowledged Babylon's prestige while keeping it within Assyrian control. For about 16 years, the arrangement held, but tensions rose. In 652 BCE, Shamash-Shum-Ukin led a grand alliance of Babylonians, Chaldeans, Elamites, and Arameans in revolt against his brother. A brutal civil war followed. After a prolonged siege, Babylon was starved into submission in 648 BCE. Shamash-Shum-Ukin reportedly died in the flames of his palace. This time, Ashurbanipal chose not to destroy Babylon. Instead, he conducted rituals of reconciliation, installed the puppet king Kandalanu, and left the city intact. A lover of learning, Ashurbanipal collected Babylonian texts for his famed library at Nineveh, preserving their scientific and literary traditions. Even when politically subjugated, Babylon's cultural prestige endured. Its gods were honored, its scribes valued, and its literature revered. The Neo-Babylonian Empire rises. After Ashurbanipal's death in 631 BCE, Assyria descended into civil strife. In 626 BCE, the Chaldean prince Nabopolassar declared himself king of Babylon and expelled Assyrian control for good. This marked the start of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, a new golden age. Nabopolassar allied with the Medes and Iranian people, and together they launched devastating campaigns against Assyria. The once mighty Assyrian cities, including Nineveh, fell by 612 BCE. By 609 BCE, Assyria was no more, and Babylon had emerged as Mesopotamia's supreme power. Things fall apart. The decline and fall of Babylon. By the late 540s BCE, Babylon's once glorious empire was facing a formidable new threat: the rise of the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. Having already unified much of Iran and conquered the Median Empire, Cyrus had recently defeated the wealthy kingdom of Lydia. Next on his list was Mesopotamia. In 539 BCE, Cyrus marched on Babylon. The reigning Babylonian king, Nabonidus, returned from years of absence to lead the defense, but internal divisions and discontent weakened Babylonia's resolve. At the Battle of Opis, near the Tigris River, Cyrus's army decisively defeated the Babylonians. Soon after, Babylon itself fell, not in a siege, but through peaceful surrender. According to Babylonian records and the famous Cyrus Cylinder, the city's gates were opened by officials dissatisfied with Nabonidus. Cyrus entered Babylon without a fight and was welcomed as a liberator rather than a conqueror. Cyrus, well aware of Babylon's religious significance, acted with political tact. He visited the temple of Marduk, had himself crowned king, and presented himself as the restorer of Babylonian tradition. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay inscription buried in Babylon, describes how the god Marduk selected Cyrus to bring peace and justice. Cyrus allowed displaced gods to return to their temples and exiled peoples to go home. The Persians adopted the title King of Babylon and initially respected the city's traditions. Babylon became one of the empire's most important provincial centers, continuing its cultural and administrative relevance. Rebellions and reprisals. Cyrus's son, Cambyses, and later Persian kings like Darius I maintained Babylon's privileged position. Cambyses may even have participated in the Babylonian New Year festival, holding Marduk's hand in the sacred rite. But when Darius I came to power in 522 BCE, Babylon revolted twice. Both uprisings were led by pretenders who adopted the prestigious name Nebuchadnezzar to claim legitimacy. Darius suppressed these revolts with force, reportedly punishing the rebels harshly. Later, under Xerxes I, R. 486 to 465 BC, Babylon rebelled again around 482 BC. This time, Persian retribution was severe. Ancient sources say Xerxes removed the golden statue of Marduk, possibly destroyed parts of the city's ziggurat, and abolished the Babylonian crown. From that point on, Persian kings stopped calling themselves King of Babylon, and the city was reduced to the status of an ordinary satrapy, no longer exceptional. Some historians view this moment as a turning point. Babylon's temples began to fall into neglect, and its religious institutions never fully recovered. Scholarship amid decline. Despite political setbacks, Babylon's intellectual life remained vibrant. Babylonian astronomers continued documenting celestial events in detailed astronomical diaries, which also recorded weather, prices, and political events. The Persians, ever pragmatic, employed Babylonian scribes and scholars in their administration. Alexander the Great and the final glory. In 331 BCE, the old world shifted again. Alexander the Great defeated the Persians at Gaugamela and entered Babylon in triumph. The city surrendered peacefully, and Alexander was greeted as a liberator. Ancient sources describe the Babylonians showering him with flower petals. Alexander, respecting the city's heritage, vowed to restore Babylon's temples and began plans to rebuild the ruined Etemenanke ziggurat, which had long fallen into disrepair. His men spent weeks clearing the rubble, but the task proved immense. Tragically, Alexander fell ill and died in Babylon in 323 BCE in the former palace of Nebuchadnezzar. His dream of making Babylon a capital of his New World empire died with him. Hellenistic shift and final decline. After Alexander's death, his generals fought over his empire. Seleucus I gained control of Mesopotamia and briefly took the title king of Babylon. However, he soon founded a new city, Seleucia on the Tigris, just 50 miles north. Strategically located and better connected to trade routes, Seleucia drew people and power away from Babylon. By 275 BCE, the population had largely relocated. Temples continued operating for a time, and Antiochus IV is said to have offered sacrifices at Babylon around 170 BCE, but the city's glory days were over. Streets grew quiet. Babylon had become a relic. Even so, its scholarly legacy endured. The astronomical diaries continued until at least 60 BCE, and cuneiform writing persisted into the 1st century CE. The last known cuneiform inscription in Babylon dates to around 75 CE, showing a thread of continuity even as the world around it changed. By the Parthian period, 2nd century BCE to 3rd century CE, Babylon was largely in ruins, though a small village presence remained. The classical geographer Strabo, writing in the 1st century BCE, noted, "The greater part of Babylon is so deserted that one would not hesitate to call it a great desert. Much of the once mighty city had been dismantled for bricks, and the Euphrates had shifted course. Travelers found scattered ruins, with names passed down by local tradition. Babylon had faded, but not been forgotten. From humble beginnings, Babylon rose to imperial greatness, not once but twice, first under Hammurabi and again under Nebuchadnezzar II. Its influence shaped law, religion, astronomy, and empire. Though its political power waned, Babylon's cultural and intellectual legacy echoed across millennia, leaving an imprint on history that outlasted even its walls.